Welcome back to the deep dive. If you work in business, well, frankly, if you just try to get anything done, you've seen them.
Oh, yeah. Those slick, really shareable bits of decision-making advice.
Exactly. Today we're diving into the allure of the decision-making formula. Things like the 70% rule, get 70% of the info, then decide.
Or the classic 80-20 principle for figuring out priorities.
Right, or that one you see everywhere, the two-way door framework. They sound so smart, so actionable.
They really do. They promise this sort of clarity, turning these complex, sometimes really high-stakes leadership moments into, like, clean math.
But what our source material argues, and what we're exploring today, is that while there might be a tiny grain of truth there, applying them rigidly,
Yeah.
it's dangerously incomplete.
Dangerously incomplete. I like that framing.
Yeah. So our mission for you listening
Yeah.
is to unpack why relying on these neat formulas can actually become a substitute for, well, real critical thinking. It turns judgment into just another box to pick. We want to explain why these supposed shortcuts often lead you absolutely nowhere useful, and maybe talk about what truly decisive leaders focus on instead.
And I think we need to hit that core tension right up front. You're essentially trying to solve a judgment problem, which is messy, right? It needs intuition, experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to solve it like it's a measurement problem. We reach for the formula because, well, formulas feel safe.
Safe how?
If it goes wrong, you don't have to stand by your judgment. You defend the process. Hey, I followed the 70% rule.
Ah, okay. That's a much easier conversation to have with your boss or stakeholders.
Way easier than saying, well, my gut said go, and it didn't work out. Blame the formula, not yourself.
Got it. Okay, let's dig into this common scenario, that organizational stall point. It happens all the time. You have a team, they're stuck. Maybe it's a big product pivot, maybe a tricky restructure.
Yeah, could be anything.
And what's the knee-jerk reaction? More data? Commission reports? Schedule more meetings to review the reports?
Lots of meetings.
And it feels so diligent. It feels strategic, like you're doing the work.
But that feeling, that sense of activity, that's the trap. The sources we looked at, they're pretty clear. Often, this isn't real progress at all.
So what is it then?
They call it postponing the discomfort of commitment. All that data gathering, all those meetings, it's basically just elaborate procrastination.
Elaborate procrastination.
Ah.
Wow, that hits home. Can you give us a quick analogy, something relatable?
Sure. Think about, you need to write that really difficult email, maybe ending a partnership or giving tough feedback.
Okay, yeah. Dread that.
Right. But instead of doing that, you spend like 3 hours tweaking the font on your internal weekly status update.
Guilty.
You feel productive, right? You're busy staring at a screen, but you deliberately avoided the actual hard thing. In business, that procrastination just looks fancier. Spreadsheets, consultants.
All serving the purpose of just waiting.
Exactly. Waiting because you're afraid. Fear of being wrong is basically driving the bus.
And then, inevitably, someone says, okay, time's up, we need to move, let's just use the 70% rule. But this is where it gets kind of absurd, isn't it?
Totally absurd.
How do you even calculate 70% confidence? Like, are you counting PowerPoint slides? Survey answers? What is 70%?
And that attempt right there to slap a hard number on a feeling confident, certainty, being ready, that's where it completely breaks down. The sources make this fantastic distinction. Business decisions, they're not like baking.
Baking.
Okay.
Like following a recipe.
Exactly. Baking needs a precise recipe. Follow it, you get a predictable cake. Miss 30% of the flour.
Disaster. A very flat, sad cake.
Right. Business decisions are much more like jazz.
Jazz. Interesting. How so?
Well, in jazz, you absolutely need to know the rules, the theory, the chords, the scales. You need deep knowledge. But the actual performance, that's improvisation. It depends on the moment, the other musicians, the audience vibe. You have to know the rules so well you know exactly when and how to break them.
Okay, I get that. So trying to force this messy qualitative judgment into a rigid, fake 70% number
Means you're prioritizing the feeling of measurement over actual context and nuanced understanding. It misses the whole point.
I love that analogy. Though I definitely know managers who'd much prefer the predictable cake recipe, let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Safer that way.
So if
Sure.
we can't just rely on hitting some magic percentage, how do the best leaders think about the risk? How do they categorize the decision itself? That must be the starting point, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is where we have to talk about understanding the nature of the decision. This is the critical nuance that gets completely lost in those viral sound bites. We need that framework, often credited to Jeff Bezos, type 1 versus type 2 decisions.
One-way door versus the two-way door.
Precisely. The goal isn't hitting a number. It's understanding the consequences. Specifically, how reversible is this? What's the cost if we're wrong?
Okay, let's use the source examples to really nail this difference.
Perfect. So consider two scenarios. Scenario one, your 30-person marketing team needs a new project management tool, something cloud-based.
Okay, pretty common.
Scenario two, you're thinking about selling off a whole division of your company, one that brings in, say, 40% of your revenue.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, vastly different stakes.
Totally different. The project management tool, that's reversible. That's a type 2 decision. If it bombs, it's annoying. It costs time, maybe some money.
But you can switch back. Or try another tool in 6 months. It's a two-way door. You can walk back through.
Exactly. And for those decisions, the type 2 ones, the advice is actually you should probably decide faster than 70%. Maybe 50% information is enough, maybe even less.
Why so fast?
Because the cost of waiting often exceeds the cost of being wrong. Killing momentum, losing a competitive edge by delaying, that's often more damaging than picking a slightly imperfect tool you can fix later. Course correct.
Okay, but here's where I want to push a bit. If speed is good for type 2, doesn't the 70% rule kind of help there? Doesn't it give people permission to stop chasing that mythical 100% certainty and just move? Isn't that its practical value?
It gives permission, yeah, but it's permission without context. And that's the danger. If you take that same 70% rule and apply it to the type 1 decision selling off that huge division.
That's reckless.
Utterly reckless. That's the one-way door. Once you go through, pulling back is incredibly hard, maybe impossible. For those decisions, you absolutely need to get as close to certainty as you possibly can.
And that's not about being overly cautious.
No, it's just realistic. It's about honestly assessing the massive consequences. So the 70% rule, it's only even potentially relevant after you've decided it's a type 2 reversible choice. The classification has to come first.
That makes so much sense. So the real key isn't obsessing over the percentage, it's judging the reversibility first. That unlocks smarter, faster decisions where appropriate.
And what's really fascinating is that even knowing about type 1 and type 2 isn't always enough. You see teams correctly label a decision, okay, this is type 2, we can move fast. But they still get stuck.
Why? If they know it's reversible, what's the holdup?
Because the next layer of the problem kicks in. It's not just about the volume of information, it's about whether you have the right information.
And this is where teams can just drown in data, right? More information starts to actually mean more confusion, more paralysis.
Exactly. They pile up data to feel safer, but they completely miss the crucial signal buried in all that noise.
Can you give some examples of that, where teams gathered tons of info but missed the point?
Sure. The sources had some great ones, like a team might survey 500 customers, great quantitative data, nice charts.
Let's get on the presentation.
Totally. But that volume might be useless compared to spending deep quality time really listening to just 5 customers to understand their actual experience, their real pain points.
It's that difference between the what and the why.
Precisely. Or another example. A team spends weeks analyzing 3 years of historical market trends. Useful context, maybe. But maybe they should have spent that time building a super quick prototype, an MVP, to test their core assumption right now. History is interesting, but the market doesn't wait.
Right. Test the future, don't just study the past.
And here's the one that really stood out, kind of uncomfortable. A team spends months dissecting competitor strategies, poring over internal reports, debating pricing.
Standard strategic work.
Seems like it. But they completely ignore a much simpler, maybe more telling data point right under their noses, asking why their own top employees were quietly polishing up their LinkedIn profiles.
Ooh, brutal.
Yeah. The most vital piece of information might not be in some expensive external report. It might be the quiet morale shift happening down the hall.
That suggests that sometimes the most critical information is the stuff we least want to look at, because it confirms something difficult or unpleasant.
Which brings us to maybe the most uncomfortable truth in all of this. Sometimes, deep down, you already know the right decision, and it's often a hard one.
Like what?
You know that partnership isn't working, the values just don't align. You know that senior hire you were excited about, it was a mistake, and it needs fixing fast.
But instead of acting,
you commission another study. You ask for more analysis. You're secretly hoping the data will magically give you a different answer, an easier answer.
you're basically looking for data to give you an excuse, a safety net,
Yeah.
to shield you from making that tough call or from, disappointing people.
It's the ultimate form of self-sabotage, but it's disguised as diligence. The goal stops being solving the business problem and becomes avoiding the hard conversation the solution requires.
Wow. That's a really tough mirror to hold up.
Yeah.
So, okay, if we strip away the formulas, the data rabbit holes, we're left with just us and the need for actual judgment. If the best decision makers aren't just following rules, what are they doing? How do they build that judgment?
They focus on asking completely different kinds of questions, much deeper, more introspective questions. They don't ask, do we have 70%?
So what do they ask?
3 key things, usually. First, what specific piece of information, if I saw it, would actually change my mind?
Ooh, I like that. It forces you to define the threshold before you get biased by the data you collect.
Exactly. It stops you from just confirmation bias hunting. You're actively looking for what might prove you wrong.
Okay, what's the second question?
The second one is really personal, sometimes organizational. What are we really afraid of? They dig into the root cause of the hesitation. Is it fear of the market rejecting the idea? Or is it maybe fear of looking stupid in front of the board? Naming the real fear changes how you assess the risk.
That takes some real honesty. And the third?
The third links back to that reversibility idea. Will waiting genuinely uncover some critical new insight we couldn't get otherwise? Or is waiting just delaying the inevitable hard conversation or decision?
Those 3 questions. They force clarity, don't they? They force accountability. They force judgment.
They do. And critically, they often lead the best decision makers towards valuing velocity over absolute precision. But, and this is a huge but, that speed must be paired with learning.
Speed plus learning.
Yes. Good decision-making isn't about never being wrong. It's about setting things up so you can course-correct quickly when you are wrong, building in the ability to learn and adapt.
The sources had a great example of this, didn't they? The team launching imperfect features.
Yeah, exactly. The team that pushes out 3 imperfect features quickly learns way more from real users, from the market reaction, than the team that waits months trying to launch one single, theoretically perfect feature.
That iterative loop is powerful.
Yeah.
Speed creates learning opportunities.
It absolutely does. Speed can be a huge competitive edge, especially now. But we have to be really, really clear about the danger, too.
Which is?
Velocity without the ability to reverse course is just recklessness wearing a productivity costume.
Wow, say that again?
Velocity without the ability to reverse course, without that type 2 two-way door, is just recklessness disguised as getting things done fast. You have to know if you're quickly testing a type 2 bet or recklessly rushing a type 1 decision that could crater the whole company.
Okay. So wrapping this up for everyone listening, the manager, the leader, the team member, there's no magic formula, no percentage to memorize that solves everything.
But no shortcuts.
The real job is developing your judgment. It's about understanding the specific decision in front of you, its consequences, its reversibility, and being honest about when you're being prudently cautious versus when you're just scared to commit.
That's the absolute heart of it. The reason these formulas are so tempting, so alluring, is they promise to let us stop thinking so hard.
Yeah.
They offer this illusion that we can somehow optimize our way out of the fundamental uncertainty of business, of life, really. But the big takeaway from these sources, the big realization, the uncertainty is the job.
The uncertainty is the job.
That discomfort you feel making a call without perfect information, that's not a sign you're failing. That is the work. Facing that ambiguity and making the best call you can with what you have.
That's a really powerful reframe. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, try this. The next time you come across one of these neat decision-making frameworks, the 70% rule, or anything else that sounds clean and simple, ask yourself one critical question.
Okay.
Ask, what does this framework allow me to conveniently ignore? Am I using it to genuinely make a better, more thoughtful decision that actually respects the risk involved? Or am I just using it to make the decision feel safer for me, even if it's not necessarily the right choice?
Because there are no shortcuts.
No shortcuts to developing and ultimately trusting your own judgment. That's the real work.